Hello, all, and happy Thursday. Welcome back for another round of Voices of Resilience. And I'm really excited about what we've got to talk about today. We also have an extra guest here. Last week was an adventure. We had surprise guests, but this week it's scheduled surprise guests. First off, my name is Nathan Hofer. I am the Director of Campus Operations for the Lost&Found Association. If you don't know who we are or what we're about, and someone had just told you to tune in to this livecast, thank you. But let me tell you just a little bit about who we are. Lost&Found is an organization focused on building resilience in young adults as a form of giving them skills and a community of support to deal with mental health issues before they become a problem. So dealing with mental health issues as a preventative measure instead of a reactive one. And so we focus on doing this through programming, through research, through community building, through advocacy. And we do all these things because I'd like to work to a point where I don't need to be in this job anymore. We don't need this because we aren't dealing with suicide or self-harm, that we're past all of that. That's the goal. That's our dream. And we work in a space with a lot of other wonderful people who are doing that same thing. And one of those people is with us here right now. Her name is Angela Drake with AFSP, and I'm going to bring her in because they've got some stuff coming up, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to share because AFSP is one of our happy partners that we get to work with a lot. So Angela, welcome.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me today.
Thanks for being here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on with AFSP? I know you've got some stuff coming up here.
Well, yeah, we have just a little bit happening this next week. Obviously, Saturday is the Out of the Darkness walk at Terrace Park. We hope everybody will come out and join us. We are safely and socially distancing as we walk. And we will be live streaming if you're not comfortable to come and join us at Terrace Park. We are asking that everybody register online as much as possible. So grab your phone, grab your laptop, iPad, whatever, and register online at afsp.org/Sioux Falls. You can create a fundraising page there and share it on your social media at afsp.org/Sioux Falls. If you'd like, you can pick up your honor beads and your t-shirts prior to the event. We will be at the Barrel House on Monday all day. They are also kickbacking some of their sales as well to us. Monday all day will be there where you can pick up your t-shirts and your honor beads as well. And then on Wednesday from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., we will be at Black Hills Federal Credit Union on 10th Street, one of our sponsors. So we will be there from 3 to 7 p.m. as well. So you can drop by, come and see us, purchase some of our AFSP merchandise, t-shirts, things like that as well. And then just stop by, say hi, and pick up your merchandise and honor beads to represent your connection to the cause, and stop by and see us.
I love that. And for those of you who might be watching who maybe don't know, but this month is National Suicide Prevention Month, and we just had National Suicide Prevention Week last week. So this is definitely a busy month for ourselves as well as a lot of other folks in the sphere like AFSP. So if you don't connect with us, I hope you connect with AFSP or NAMI or the Helpline Center, all these people that we get to partner with, as well as all the other folks in this sphere. So we'll be there. We have some of our Lost&Found chapters doing some stuff with the walk, and I think I think you and I still need to figure out streaming, but I'm gonna. So if it fails, it's not my fault, but it might be my fault.
It's totally your fault. And then we'll be at USF campus next week with your Lost&Found chapter as well, doing some Talk Saves Lives. So, and doing a panel as well. So I'm excited to meet with your kids. Your kids to me. I'm sorry, I know you're full-grown adults, but you always be kids to me.
I love it. Well, y'all, I will put the link to the AFSP local chapter in our comments in a moment. But please check them out. Check out this. And thank you, Angela, for taking some time to join us here today.
Thank you so much, Lost&Found, and thank you for everything that you're doing on your campuses. Mwah.
See you, Angela.
Bye.
Oh, I cut her off just a hair too soon. Sorry, Angela, but she said bye, and she's still smiling. She's still happy. She'll forgive me maybe. But now it's time to introduce our guest for today. It is someone who I've known for years, although we didn't realize we knew each other for years. Back in the day when I used to be an athlete, and Terry still is. But I have Terry Liggins with us today of the Hurdle Life Coach. Terry, welcome to our Voices of Resilience conversation.
Hey, Nathan, I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate the old reference to my old days. I'm retired. I am retired from athletics.
I bet you could still make me feel real slow because I have been retired for longer. Hey, so Terry, why don't you just tell us a little bit about I didn't really do your intro a whole lot of justice. So tell me a little bit about the Hurdle Life Coach and what it is that you do, and then we'll dive right into some of your story right after that. So.
Excellent. So the Hurdle Life Coach was incorporated 18 months ago, 2019 February. I've been full-time with the Hurdle Life Coach since January of this year. Great time to go full-time. Thanks, COVID.
Hear that. Full-time for me was February. I understand.
Really shook things up. But, at the Hurdle Life Coach, we provide coaching services, mentorship services, and also education services. And particularly with COVID, with some of the things that are happening, the climate of the country, we specialize in helping people through transition. So we look at that transition from high school to college to workforce, within the workforce, maybe from workforce to entrepreneurship, but even more specifically, we focus on those that are transitioning from incarceration, homelessness, or those that are battling with addiction and recovery issues. So really a heavy lift when it comes to working through trauma and really educating on trauma-informed practices, trauma-informed programs, really heavy into prevention work right now. That's why I really love what you're doing at Lost&Found and the team to get into the prevention work. But just standing in the gap that we could just be more humane with each other, more authentic, more transparent through our education, our coaching, and mentorship services.
Love that. And, I think you and I have had this conversation multiple times already, but those points of transition are just such impactful moments that people are vulnerable for a lot of reasons, vulnerable for the good and the bad, so being able to be there for them in those transitions is something I very much am behind. So I love that you're doing that as well, Terry.
Absolutely.
So Terry, like I said, we'll just dive right in. But before I ask my first question, I just want to say to our listeners out there, I see we've got some people on here live with us. Welcome to our stream. If you have questions for Terry as we go through, please toss them in the comments. We will get to them as we are able. But I say this often too. Y'all are probably tired of hearing from me, and I understand. I have to hear myself all the time. So if you have questions that you want answered as Terry goes through his story and our conversations here as we talk about resilience and what makes someone a resilient person, add your questions. We want to answer what you want to know, not just what I want to know. I can figure that out later. So anyways, that being said, Terry, we've talked about your story, and it's so powerful. It's so I think you said the other day it's colorful.
It's colorful.
But I just love it if you'd be willing to share some of that here to all of our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just want to express another gratitude for being here in this space. I love this series, Voices of Resilience. I've been following the programming at Lost&Found, and to be a part of this is truly an honor. And I really do hope that, by sharing my story, that someone's able to get some inspiration, some hope out of it, and really believe in this thing called resilience. So again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you for being here, truly.
When I go into my story, I often take people back to the beginning and one of my earliest memories. Being born and raised into a single parent home of 6 in North Omaha, Nebraska, and experiencing all of the adversities and challenges that comes along with having a single mother who's working 2 jobs all the time, doing the best to make ends meet. I went through a pretty typical childhood of what you would expect when it comes to not having a lot of supervision around, the drugs, the violence, the gangs that were all around. And one of my earliest childhood memories was actually surviving my first drive-by shooting at 6 years old. I know that's not a common occurrence for some 6-year-olds, but for me it was. When I say it's my first drive-by shooting, it's because it wasn't my last. I recall a few others growing up in that violent neighborhood where gunshots were rang out and it would just be dangerous. I recall making it through that, going through that, but moving around a lot as a kid. When I went to college in Vermilion at 18 years old and I looked back over my life, I realized I had moved 17 times in 18 years. One of the
That's wild.
Yeah, one of the most tumultuous times was going to 3 different fourth grades and 3 different fifth grades, being that new student, dealing with that anxiety of newness, and sometimes the consequence of being picked on and bullied. These are the type of experiences I recall from my childhood. Also, I became a father at an early age. I became a teen parent at 15 years old. That changed my life. Getting involved with the juvenile probation and juvenile detention from my lack of supervision, that happened. But those conditions really set the stage for me to become the motivator and the finisher that I am today. When I was 15 years old and became a dad, I thought to myself of my own father, and I was filled with different emotions like anger and resentment and bitterness. And I made a decision that day that I wanted to become something that my son could be proud of. That drove me through high school to finish high school. I almost joined the military, but I was recruited to the University of South Dakota on a track scholarship, and that began the next phase of my journey into my adulthood.
Yeah, that is a pretty roller coastery. That's not a good adjective, but I just think about that. That's a lot of ups and downs. And I think about what I went to a very small school in South Dakota here, and I think about what it was like for when new people came into our class and how difficult it was for them to feel integrated into a place that had kind of a culture kind of develop. And you did that so many times. That's just that's pretty wild. And obviously, I think we'll talk about it more too. But your connection with the juvenile detention system, and then being a parent, that's something I'm experiencing now, and I can't imagine what that put on you, on that sense of ownership and that sense of, gosh, I don't even know what the right word is, but what that did for your drive, because I think about that with my kids now, and it's like I think that's really awesome that was a motivator for you, instead of something that you were like, oh.
Yeah, it was hard. It was tough. I equate it sometimes, Nathan, to a contract that you can't get out of. I mean, when you become a parent, you are a parent for the duration. And so it was really, a rubber meets the road moment, a back against the wall moment. And those are defining moments when you're put in those positions. And I tell my son often, he was my very first motivation. So I'm grateful for that experience today, even though certainly hard being a teen parent, 10th grade, 11th and 12th grade. And even through college, I had a different sense about why I was there and what I wanted to accomplish, because I already had that sense of obligation as a father at an early age.
Yeah, and how was that experience for you? Like how did you take that, all those hard things that happened to you in your youth, and turn it into a motivator? Because I don't want to steal your thunder here, but I know that you were a first generation college student, so this was in and of itself was a new experience for you, and not just for yourself, for your whole family. And I think that's like, what was it in you that took you from point A through all those other things to get to point T or wherever we're at,
Well, I'll tell you, I was very privileged and blessed to have a family that was full of faith. The one thing I didn't lack was a family that believed in what I could accomplish. So I was very fortunate in that. Some people's situations are much different, and their households are much different, with much more criticism and blame and shame. My mother is wonderful. She's a neighborhood mom. Doors always open. We learn to share as youth to our siblings and to our friends. It was never about how much we had. It was always about everyone getting some. So it didn't matter if it was 2 soda pops, 1 pizza, 10 pizzas, 4 sandwiches. It was just all about dividing it equally, that everyone would be included. So I had this beautiful family spirit that says, you can do it, Terry. You're capable. And I took that with me into my freshman year at the University of South Dakota, where, yes, it was completely a culture shock, very different. It's where I first came into the knowing of the word diversity and began to explore it as and understand it as differences. And I remember, Nathan, knowing that I was different. Absolutely. I wasn't different in North Omaha. All my friends looked like me in North Omaha for the most part. I wasn't a minority. But at the University of South Dakota, I became a minority, and this thing called diversity was introduced to me, and I learned it to be differences. And then I said, well, I don't want my differences to intimidate or frighten people. I want people to honor my differences, embrace my differences. So I should do that for other people as well. And so I adopted that golden rule to treat people the way I would want to be treated. And I became a fan of the everything different than me. And I started meeting people from all the small towns in South Dakota. And I was intrigued by their graduating class size of like 14, 16. Like, what?
So small, 21.
21. All those things to me were just so fascinating, and I just led with so much curiosity in that it really just led to me really making a whole bunch of friends, getting involved in student engagement and leadership. Plus, I had the athletic scholarship that I was running as well. So my association with the athletic department, I joined a fraternity. So I just leaned in. I really leaned in, and that's what I encourage young students to do today. Lean in to that college environment. There are so many things that you can be involved in to help you find yourself or continue to build into who you already see yourself as. When I started college as a freshman, I chose criminal justice because I knew that's what I wanted to do. It was my lived experience already, but some people are still figuring that out and getting involved in student activities, joining fraternities, intramurals, all those different things. Really, I look back and I'm so grateful I leaned into those things. So those associations, Nathan, along with my family's belief in me, helped me to get off to a good start in college early on.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it when you were first doing your intro, talking about transitions. And so obviously this was a pretty intense transition coming from North Omaha to Vermilion.
Yep.
We love USD. USD is where Lost and Found was founded. So, even as a jackrabbit, I still love the USD for that.
Yeah.
So obviously
I was going to try to keep that in, but
I can't. We can't go down this path. It won't lead anywhere positive. I can't do it. But with that in mind, obviously that transition into college was intense, but also that transition. There's so many transitions in your university experience that I think were very impactful. And as you exited, that university experience. So can you share some of those transitions and how you navigated those? But because like I said, as we deal with young adulthood, and as we deal with adulthood in general, at any point, those transitions are those times that are so incredibly difficult, and they leave us vulnerable for a number of things. And there's so many that happen in the college environment specifically.
Yeah. So when I think about those rubber meet the road moments for me, or I talked about when I became a parent and needing, just a fork in the road. Getting involved in student activities was huge. When you join a club or an organization and you take an executive office, you then assume responsibility for executing things and operating and delegating and formulating. And that was certainly enjoyable and exhilarating, but it also comes with a criticism and feedback and other people's ideas on the way things should happen or go. And I really was exposed very deeply into student leadership and engagement activities at the U. I actually presided over 5 different student groups when I was there. I presided over my government floor, and then 2 different student groups. One was the Black Student Union. The other one was called a Dance Club, where we used the diversity of music to bring together the diversity of people. And then ultimately, I became the Student Government Association president. And I became the first African American Student Government Association president at the U. And so now here I am. Huh?
That's a huge deal. I know how I worked at USD for a year, and I know how big of an impact student government makes on that whole climate. It's a big deal to be involved with student government there, let alone be the president. So that's a huge thing. I just want people who are listening to understand that's a really big deal.
Thank you, Nate. Yeah, I campaigned. I put myself out there, came up with all of these different slogans and things, and I just can't recommend enough getting involved in student groups. I actually have a whole presentation about that I deliver at colleges about student engagement and investment with a high return, because it's foundational in your adulthood and your career path. Leadership is you need that, right? Leadership is what it's about. And the college environment is the perfect environment for you to be able to take risk without as much of a catastrophic impact for your failures, because you will fail. You will make errors. You will plan something and it won't go as planned. But that college environment is perfect for that learning and growing through that. And so as I was leading there, under the magnifying glass of criticism and critique, became the Student Government Association president, and my style wasn't accepted by everyone. People had concerns about the way I led, and looking back on it, I can certainly see where I could have been more reserved, but I also can see where my uniqueness and my difference wasn't understood. And it ultimately turned into an impeachment proceeding. And this time in my life was so hard, because I was under a magnifying glass, leading a student government association, aspired to be meaningful and contribute in a positive way. And then I was under this magnifying glass publicly for a breach of my executive authority. And I was impeached for abusing my power and then ultimately removed from office. And man, was that hard to lose something so near and dear to me, such as that role. People don't often recognize that grief and loss shows up more than just in loss in life, that you can lose a very meaningful position or employment and it'd be just as catastrophic. And that was really hard for me. That's one of the things that happened to me in college that was really hard, Nathan, is when I was impeached and removed from office.
Yeah. And before I follow up here, I had a comment come through from my buddy Wendy Dooley. So she's saying that she's every time you talk, she learns, she's inspired, and as I said earlier, thank you for taking time, but also thank you for being vulnerable, because it's hard to talk about the things in life that don't go well.
Yeah.
In our Instagram life is you show the good parts, you don't want to show the bad, and
right.
So to be open and vulnerable is important. And as you touched on grief and loss,
yeah.
I think that's an important topic to focus in or bring focus back to, because we are in a period of grief and loss right now worldwide. And I think that what you're talking about in your story, if we put it into our own realm, our own reality right now, I think it's okay to acknowledge that you can feel grief for a loss, and you can feel sad and have these hard emotions to process, even if you didn't, like I said, lose someone to something, or lose, have a sickness or an illness or something else. Like the loss of something precious, still a loss.
Absolutely. Yep. And someone was asking me about that. I was doing a education event about 2 weeks ago, talking about resilience and the science of resilience, and the audience member said, how do we work through that in a time like COVID where people have lost a lot of things, whether that is a loved one to death, or just, their routine has been, they lost their routine, school was put out, all these different things. And I reminded people attachment and belonging is so important during that time. And attachment and belonging is a part of the science of building resilience. And so it's in those times of grief and loss that you don't want to isolate and you don't want to insulate. Those are the times you really want to lean into your 2 or 3 people, or your clubs, or your church, or whatever group you're a part of, to get that attachment and that belonging to really help you through that. Because if I didn't have my friend group at that time, if I wasn't able to still go to track and field practice and just, block it all out, for those 3 hours every day, travel on the weekends with my team and still be affirmed for the positive things that are still inside of me, because they're still good in me. They're still good in all of us. No matter the mistakes and choices we make, you're still a good person. Conditions and environments out of our control, within our control, happen to us, but it is how we respond. And in that grief and loss, we really want to make sure we're attaching to people, and we're spending time in the places where we belong or that we're associated.
So what I'm hearing is when you went through this impeachment process, you still knew your value, and you still found connection and a sense of belonging through others and through other people. You didn't just attach your full self to the role of student body president. Is that fair?
Yes, exactly. And to trust those environments. So get involved. Get involved. Yes, we are independent. We have our independent will and our choices, but connection and belonging. So, like I said, if it's intramurals, if it's fraternity, if it's athletics, if it's friend group, have that place of belonging that you can lean into during those hard times. I think about another thing too, Nathan. When I was 21 years old, as a junior in college, so this is actually before the impeachment, I actually had actual death happened to me as well. My little brother, rest his soul, was a victim of a drive-by shooting in Omaha. I talked about surviving a drive-by shooting at 6. My brother wasn't so fortunate at 18 years old. He was at the right place, a family member's house, wrong time. I went back home to Omaha in 2006 for Thanksgiving break. I saw my brother at about midnight that night. We got a call at 2:30 that morning. This is Thanksgiving Day morning, that a drive-by had occurred, and then my brother had died at the scene. And I can feel it now, the darkest day of my life. And going through that was the hardest thing I've ever been through, until I went to later in life. I had one more challenge, but my brother died at 18 years old, and I was a junior in college, and I was a high performing athlete, and I was leading student groups. And I'm just so grateful for some of his last words to me, where he told me to keep on keeping on and not to give up on myself. I remember telling him that I would risk it all if anything ever happened to him. And he says, Terry, don't ever do that. Don't ever quit. We need you. You're an inspiration. Please don't ever forsake everything you worked for, in short, is what he said to me. And I hold on to those words. But man, was that a dark day. And I went through 2 weeks of numbness and shock. And I remember returning back to the University of South Dakota again, needing to get through a dark day. And if I didn't have my fraternity that was there for me really during that time, again, my athletic belonging at that time, I could only imagine how I would have responded without having the attachment and belonging in the darkest day of my early adulthood.
Yeah, and I know we talked about this the other day, Terry, a little bit, but different scenario, of course. But I also, I also lost my brother, who was 14 suddenly to an accident, and there's you talked about it already, isolation and insulation, and I know that's 100% what I did in that state of being in my life, and I chose to keep others at bay and did not handle it well. I think it's I think, you go back and you see how those things are handled. And I look at you and how you handle it. You went back, you had to turn that into a motivation. You turn that into uh, a room, a space for you to provide impact. And for those of you who are watching now or later, I mean, you turn that into being a national champion at the level of
Yeah,
college athletics. I mean, in hurdles. And
yeah,
that is in and of itself a really powerful statement of like taking hardships that a lot of folks maybe just can't even fathom, because we're not even through your story yet here. We're still in the midst here, and you took those and used those as motivating as opposed
yeah,
to weights that kept you down. And I think that's
yeah.
very powerful.
And that's what it's about. That's a part of what resilience is. I mean, when you look at resilience and you start breaking it down, there's the science to resilience that you get into, building individual capabilities, attachment and belonging, as well as cultural, spiritual connections and community connections. But there's also the understanding that resilience is just a I don't quit. A resilience is I keep going until. A resilience is when adversity meets me, I meet it with tenacity. Not Vermilion. In Vermilion, resilience is turning those obstacles into opportunities. So the core belief at the Hurdle Life Coach is that just like on the track, that the obstacles and barriers in life are also meant to be hurdled. And that's what I pour out in spirit and in essence through all of our programming. One of our beliefs is that the human potential is infinite. And so when you choose to believe, and if you believe that you can, then you will. And we talk about the hurdler's mentality. One of the mentalities of a hurdler is that I'm going to get over this barrier. You have to have that mentality from the beginning. Otherwise, you start with defeat. You're already defeated if you don't believe you can get over it. And so I coach people to hurdle life, that the obstacles and barriers in life are meant to be hurdled. In fact, by their design, they're meant to fall over and not to stop you. If you look at a hurdle's design, Nathan, it's designed to fall over if you actually run at it fast enough and hard enough with enough speed. Even if you're not effective in the hurdling, if you run at it hard enough and fast enough, you'll knock it over. So what I remind people is by your design, you're greater than that obstacle and that barrier. So yes, grief, loss, death, pain, but by your design, by my design, I'm greater than my obstacles and barriers. And that all continues to fuel the essence at Hurdle Life Coach.
I love that. And I love that image too, that by design it's made to fall over, because I'm vertically challenged in my physicality and also my ups. So I never did hurdles. But I think back to when I was in high school, we were in the same area as a local favorite here in South Dakota, Chad Greenway, and that guy
Yep.
was a beast. And I remember him running the 110 hurdles, and he just kind of just like knocked him over every time. He just like would hit him with his heel and keep on going, because
Yep.
he wasn't going to let that stop him. And
Yeah.
he'd still hit the barriers. He didn't
It
care.
doesn't have to be pretty. That's the thing. Like, it ain't gonna always be pretty. I mean, today I'm pretty polished and together, but man, I've cried rivers and oceans, and I've battled doubt and insecurity, and still even to this day I surround myself with that insulation of friendship and buffers. I just posted today about some friends that were affirming me today. So, it's not always pretty. Absolutely not. It's not always pretty. But
Yeah,
if you're tenacious enough, you can get through anything.
I love that. Like I said, that's the hurdle life coach naturally drums up some images of me of hurdling, but like you said, that the barriers are meant to be knocked over. I think that's a really powerful visualization. And as we continue on your story, I know you
Yeah,
mentioned some of these barriers. I
yeah,
know that we're not done with some of this. So if
yeah,
you want to just continue on, because like I said, I hope that even if anyone isn't watching live, that they tune into this later, because
yeah,
man, just to echo what Wendy said, your story is so impactful because you've turned it into something you didn't let it define you. And I think
Yeah.
that's powerful. So as we keep going, I just wanted to throw that
For
out
sure.
there. Those hardships don't have to define you. And you've already
That's
said
right.
that.
Yeah, yeah. They develop you. They develop you. You know, they don't define you. They develop you. Some people say adversity creates character. Other people will say adversity reveals character. And so, you know, really embracing those times. But yeah, as you mentioned, if we continue to go into my story, and I'd be remiss not to mention that, yes, you know, I was able to finish college. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I minored in leadership studies. I was also advised to apply for graduate school, which I did. I got accepted. Didn't even know what grad school was as a first generation college student, but applied, got accepted, chose to study nonprofit administration because for me it was always what I found so convenient is that the things that I lived through I could actually choose for study and for profession. So this nonprofit organizations were organizations that provided resources for me and my family when we were younger, from backpack programs to church groups and things. I learned that those are nonprofit organizations, so I decided to study nonprofit administration and went to USD for 3 more years and completed my graduate degree in nonprofit administration. You mentioned I also became a national champion for the University of South Dakota. I have 6 All-Americans, 12 conference championships. All those All-Americans are top 5 finishes. In my senior year, I became a national champion for the university. And so for me, that Coyote pride, it's pretty deep when you talk about the fraternity, the athletics, the student engagement, the graduate program. I'm so proud to be a Coyote, and I'm so proud to be a South Dakotan. Been living here 16 years now, and it's a friendly rivalry up the street with the blue and yellow, but certainly for me it's all about the coyotes and stuff.
You know, you gotta have that though. It's fun. Like I said, I don't mean to interrupt your story here, but I grew up when that rivalry went away for a little while,
Yeah.
and then it came back, and so
yeah.
Gosh, I missed it.
So yeah, and I also brief caveat, when I was 10 years old, one of the places that's near and dear in my heart is when my mother decided to put her addiction down in 1995. She said she was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and she took her and her children to a women's and children's shelter in 95. And so we were homeless for about 90 days in 5th grade. And then she recovered from then, and she's been clean for 25 years. And so when I found out that the Lydia House in Omaha, Nebraska was a nonprofit, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do things that would cause those type of organizations to be around for families like mine.
I love that. Also, big props to your mom.
Yeah, big props, Mom. Cynthia, we love you, Mom. So let me get into one more part of the story that really rounds out why we have the Hurdle Life Coach today. Going through all those experiences in my childhood and as a young adult in college, I was learning so much. I was developing so much. I was learning new things, and I was able to accomplish a lot of things through my successes and through my lessons and my losses and failures. But one of the things that I didn't have ever evaluated was my mental health. I had never had an interaction with any type of professional counseling, coaching, therapy to really understand the things that I understand now about what was going on in my head the entire time, with some of the challenges that I had with my insecurities, with my doubts. I remember going through a hard time as a senior and having the thought of wanting to end it all. But even in that moment, it was around the impeachment and everything, right? I didn't have professional help to work through that. And I know that there's a counseling department there, and a part of what the responsibility is to raise that awareness for those types of services and hold people's hands sometimes to get them there, because a lot of people don't know where to go or that they even need the help. But after I graduated with my master's degree, I was approached by two individuals that I would then call my friends. And they asked me to do something that I should have said no to, but I said yes to. It was a get rich quick scheme against the United States government. It was a shortcut in life. And in my mind, I had a belief that shortcuts were okay. In my mind, I had a belief that it was okay to do the wrong thing, the right thing, the wrong way, as long as you had good intentions. But I paid the price for that. I paid the cost for that, because that promise that we wouldn't get caught didn't pan out. We all got caught, and me and 8 other individuals were federally indicted by the United States government and ultimately sent to federal prison. And so I surrendered to federal prison after all of these accolades, after all of these ups in my life and some downs, that I would experience yet another low point in my life, that I had earned this conviction from participating in something I should have said no to, from not having the integrity that I have today in leadership. I should have said no, and I should have told my friends, no, you shouldn't do that either. But I didn't. I failed in that moment. And for that, I went to federal prison. But for 13 and a half of the 14 months I was in prison, I participated in a therapeutic community. This is an environment where peer accountability is 24/7 and rampant. It's an environment where you get clinician support at a very intense level, and you start to really unwind thoughts and beliefs, emotions, perceptions, attitudes, and choices, things that I had never had exposure to in my formal education or any of my life experience. And so when I was released in 2016, after 800 hours of cognitive reprogramming, I now re-entered this community here in Sioux Falls with a different attitude, an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of humility, which I struggled with. I was in recovery from entitlement, which says rules don't apply to me, and overconfidence, which means I can get away with it. I learned all of these critical things that now are part of my foundation and fiber, that when I started my re-entry in 2016 and ultimately my recovery, I was able to embrace mentorship from men, which I never had been able to do. I had a barrier in my life of how to let men inside of me. I didn't know how to do it. It was never wired in my childhood. I never had that ability to build that safe bond with a man. And it wasn't until I got a mentor from the Genesis mentoring program here in Sioux Falls at the Community Outreach Center that I started this journey with this man, this gentleman who when he asked me for honesty, I gave it to him. He returned to me grace. It started the new life that I have today, that is open to mentorship and gives mentorship and coaching, but also has the unwavering belief that for those that are formerly incarcerated, those who have issues with addiction, those who have survived childhood trauma are not to be thrown away, left out, or forgotten about, that they can be rebuilt, that they can restart, that we can coach and train and teach resilience in individuals, families, and communities. And we can have another success story like mine, where now I look back over my life and I have 5 years sobriety from my drug of choice and over 2.5 years sobriety from alcohol and other behaviors. And so for me, Nathan, it's just a wow thing how this thing all came together. But again, yet another example that you turn your obstacles into opportunities, and that these obstacles and barriers in life are meant to be hurdled, and they can be used to help other people to believe in what they can accomplish as well.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful. I said it at the start, I'm going to say it again. Your story is so powerful because it shows that resilience. And I'm thankful you said this at the beginning, but I want to bring it up one more time, is that you're going to fail in life. And I think you can tell me your thoughts too, please. But I think we're conditioned that we can't fail, that we're not supposed to fail. And so it keeps us from being courageous and taking risks sometimes, doing good things. But, obviously sometimes we fail doing things that are not good things too. But, I think it's important to acknowledge that failure is okay. Mm-hmm. Failure is normal, because I don't know. I know I've been very failure averse at
Yeah.
many times in my life.
I can tell you the human condition by its design means that you will encounter imperfection. You will encounter coming up short. Perception, there's so much power in perception. And what I coach on and help people through at Hurdle Life Coach, we say life is not wins and losses. Life is wins and lessons. So by that change in perception alone, you now look at losses or failure in a completely different way. How do you lose when you gain the lesson? There is no losses. There's only lessons that are gained. And those who coach on leadership and they talk about failure and failing forward, we know that we learn more in our failures than we do our successes. It is when
Totally.
hello, it is when you fail and when you fall that you actually go into contemplation. Because when you're succeeding and when you're victorious, you go into celebration. And it's like, look at me. But it's when you fail, that's when you get that space to actually contemplate and reevaluate and actually polish up some of the things that are tripping you up. So failure is so good. It's so important because it's where you tighten things and button things up, and it's certainly necessary. No leader is going to tell you that they've never failed. Every leader is going to tell you that they failed. So it's a gateway to success. But don't be so hard on yourself when it happens, when you fall short. Life isn't wins and losses. Life is wins and lessons.
Yeah, the irony of that is that you talk about like we want to win all the time. I swear I can't remember hardly any of my wins per se, but I guarantee you I remember most of my failings.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's important to note too, like because we're talking about it here, but even if you're in a you're not sorry for the plane in the background. It's either inside hearing a crying child, which is fine, but it's not quite as melodic as an airplane. It makes you think of people going somewhere. But I was just thinking, is that sometimes we can encourage and create spaces where it's safe to fail, even though we want success, we shoot for success, strive for greatness, but acknowledging that it's okay for failure, I think, is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah. And it's good, and it's for growth. It's for growth. That's why it's good. It's not good because it feels good. It's good because it helps you to grow. And that is the essence and the purpose of life, is growth. And so falling short, surrounding yourself with advisors, counselors, mentors, coaches, friends, so important. Believing in yourself, that positive self-talk, I can, I will. Doing that's going to help you as well. So I encourage affirmation, community, culture, spirituality. Also for me, having a faith in something bigger than me, believing that the power of the God in me, or the God as I understood him, it to worked for me. So prayer, meditation, yoga, those different type of things are also key into building your resilience. If I didn't have a faith in me, others, and God while going through some of this stuff, I tell you, I hear from myself. I hear from my intuition, and I hear from the spirit. I remember going through that grief and loss of my brother passing, and I was questioning why it would happen and why it had to happen. And I remember getting guidance from the spirit, from my mother, and ultimately what came out of my brother's death is the life of my ministry. And today my company is not named on his behalf, but the spirit is weaved within. And I remember being in grad school when I created the project called Tori. My brother's named Tori, and it stands for Time Outreaching Youth. And I had never incorporated Tori as a nonprofit, but his spirit drives every single thing that I do. And so this is now how you take pain into purpose. Not having my father there, and that gap magnifies my dedication to parenting and to mentoring and coaching today. I am so fervent in my mentorship of young people because of the void that my brother leaves in his absence and my father leaves in their absence. And in those hardships, yes, there was pain, but I've also been able to, because of my faith, turn that into purpose. And so I just encourage that as well, to have a spirituality, find a way to the source of all things good. That certainly has also helped me, Nathan, as I continue to press forward in life. Even now, as an entrepreneur, faced with a lot of uncertainties. Now I'm a father of 3, still responsible in that contract I can't get out of, nor do I want to. Love them. My daughter, a second grader, you guys see her on my Facebook. She's amazing. But I'll just say,
I saw her picture today.
yeah,
She's cute.
yeah. I'll just say though, my faith keeps me going as well, and that's also a part of building resilience when it comes to that spiritual sense.
Yeah, if you look at if you Google wellness wheel and you look for that, spirituality as part of that, it's something we acknowledge, and what that looks like might be a little different for folks, but it's part of that. And as you, just as a side note here, as you talk about that contract you can't get out of, there are times when we negotiate the terms, like this morning when they were decided from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. it was time to play. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah,
it's fine. Who needs sleep? Terry, we're getting to kind of towards the end here.
Yeah.
Together. And so one thing I always like to ask folks, because we talk about serious things, we talk about real things, and I think there's inspiration in all those things, and the power of stories. It's just very evident as we think about everything we do in our life. But I think it's always good to end on what out there is giving you hope. Like, what are you excited about that's happening out there for you in our world, things like that? What are you looking forward to?
I think, Nathan, that we are doing community well right now. An organization like Lost&Found, complete pun intended, like, yes, Lost&Found, doing the work that you're doing right now. Also, just having friends in the community, the small business owners that are opening up their businesses to provide education services, inviting in voices like mine to make it bigger than business. I was at Coffea last week doing a presentation on resilience and courage and civic engagement. Earlier this season, I was at Posh Boutique talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and the All Lives Matter movement and the Blue Lives Matter movement, and helping us to unify in that, that all lives do certainly matter, but also to be empathetic towards the reality of some of the systematic oppression and racial injustice that exist. And for Posh Boutique to be an organization that sells clothes, but to lean into civil rights and human rights, for Coffea to be an organization that serves up, lattes and coffees, but lean into civic engagement, that is giving me hope. I was on SDPB this week as well, doing some work with Lori Walsh on In the Moment. Love it. And even later this month, I'm going to be presenting at the 20th annual Community Response to Child Abuse Conference. Registration's open now, September 30th and October 1st. I'm going to speak on the 1st. And I'm just encouraged by community. It is hard to be optimistic around systems, government, some of our leadership. Certainly, there's reason to be concerned. But at Hurdle Life Coach, one thing we try to spotlight is the community response to the administration of justice. I believe that every person wants to see a world where justice is king and peace reigns and safety is for everyone. But I'm here to tell you, if we keep pointing that finger outward at the administration of justice only being the responsibility of law enforcement officers, court officials, and correctional officers, we're missing what we call the 4th C to the administration of justice, which is community. Community has a responsibility and an opportunity to administrate justice through partnering with things like this, having dialogues and conversation, and other things that we can do in the workplace, as neighbors, with our youth diversion and mentorship programs, with parental support programs, by being trauma informed. There's things we can do as a community that ensures that justice is king for all of us as we go through life together. And so my hope comes from what we can do as a community. We'll keep investing in providing education for the justice system professionals, partnering with judicial officials, the warden at the prison, our chief of police, they deserve empathy as well. They're human beings. They deserve empathy as well for their weight, for their load. And we want to treat them the way we want to be treated. So I don't prescribe to abolishing anything. I'm about unity and coming together. But my hope, Nathan, is what we can do as a community. I think the greater space for change and influence comes from what we can do as a community, one to another, as individuals and organizations.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Terry. And I've tossed up a link to your Facebook page there, facebook.com/The Hurdle Life Coach. And I know there's access to your YouTube account from there as well. So if you all want to connect with Terry, obviously this is only a glimpse, and we are thankful for that glimpse, but you can see the work he does. I know Terry and I are working through some things to bring some of his talents and skills into our resource pool for Lost and Found. And so that's an exciting endeavor we're engaging in. So yeah, Terry, I want to say thank you to you. And I also want to say a quick thank you to our sponsors, the Astrup Family Foundation and American Bank and Trust, who are helping to make Voices of Resilience possible, because this started as a one-off program that has gained some traction, and it's been wonderful to just have these moments where we're learning more and more and more about how we can be more resilient, how we can make a difference in our community, and we get to have people like Terry join in on the conversation. So Terry, thank you again for being here.
Love it, man. I'm so happy I was able to do it and add to the amazing lineups you guys have already done. Looking forward to more work.
Yeah, next week we're gonna have a mutual friend of ours, Addie Graham Kramer, on.
That's right.
I'm talking about that. She's pretty awesome. She's a cool lady.
5 stars. 5 stars.
And one last thing before we go, want to give one last shout out. We got one from Rose Ann Kelly Hoffland saying great information and ideas here. I agree, Rose. Terry, you're awesome. So thank you again, and we'll see you all next week. And if you need to get in touch with Terry, that link is right there on our page, but you can also reach out to us here at Lost and Found, and we'll get you connected. So have an awesome day, everyone.
Hurdle Life.